Hey, so today I want to talk about a Canadian film called American Mary. This is a body horror film and it was released in 2012. I believe a lot of you may have heard about this film or not, because I think when it was released and after that it garnered a quite fan following, and it's like a cult film now. So this film is directed by the Twisted Twins, or the Soska sisters. I believe it was their second or third film. This is actually their first big budget film with like proper studio film, and this was also written by them, so it's an original film, which I appreciate. This film stars Catherine Isabel as the titular character, and as I've mentioned already, it is a body horror film. Now, I think a lot of notoriety actually goes after this film, and that's I guess mainly because of the Twisted Twins, because they have actually garnered also a fan following and they are actually quite appreciated, or their films have a different kind of cult following. So when I wanted to see this film, I thought that this film was going to be quite brutal. Now it's brutal, but I guess for my taste and through years of the type of film I've seen, this is, I would say, not as brutal. This definitely feels like a much more polished Hollywood film, and this is actually a very straightforward film, which I appreciate. This is like 102 minutes, I believe, so everything happens quite swiftly. Now, I would say that it's a very average and okay sort of film. I wouldn't say anything was done for shock value, or anything was done to just sway the audience, or sensationalize or glorified or glorified anything. That's not the case at all. American Mary is pretty much a straightforward film. But definitely after seeing this, I am interested in following Twisted Twins' career, and I want to see other films that they have done. I want to see Rabbit, which actually released in I guess 2018 or 2017. So as far as this film goes, this film actually has a very straightforward narrative. Things happen in a very sequential way, and everything just moves very swiftly. But I would say that at times this film definitely kind of feels voiceless, and by that I mean it feels like it gets the job done, but I believe the characterization or the way things are happening could have been much more cohesive and much more in-depth. Now, that's not a knock on the film, that's just where I would have preferred this film to be, and if anybody likes this film just as it is, I guess it's good enough for them, but I find this film to be quite lacking. Being that is said, I think this has also its merits. You can watch this film if you're a fan of a body horror, because I guess this has a substantial amount of, I guess, thing in them that you can enjoy. On the other hand, this is actually directed by female directors, so they do things in certain ways that a male director wouldn't have done, and which I think I appreciate. This film kind of reminded me of a much more underground film that recently came along. It's Promising Young Woman. Now, Promising Young Woman is much more polished. It's not body horror at all, and everything is almost thriller and psychological level in that film. But in here, this is much more blunt. At times blunt, but other times it's also more speculative. So it kind of feels like that. That's how female-led horror films are just going on, at least in Americas or in Canada's, where if they want a wider release, they have to keep things significantly tamer or significant in the realm of what is acceptable and what is not. But watching this film also kind of reminded me of works of Diablo Cody, and particularly Jennifer's Body. I felt like this kind of films has a similar sort of tune, where things happen in a way that is not sensationalized, but also not tame either. That's like a very fine line to walk. So if you want to watch this film, I would say it's an absolutely fine film and you can watch it, but I would like to keep that you in mind, that this film is not that gory. If you are like into films like Saw and Hostel, it's not like that, but it's also not tamer like Promising Young Woman. So if you want to watch something that's in between, I think it's an absolutely fine film, and that's why I give this film a solid 2.5 out of 5, because it's just an okay sort of film and you can watch it if you want.